Hey, welcome back to the show. This is one of my all-time favourite thrash guitar tones ever. It's Megadeth's So Far So Good So What album tone. I'm using the Marshall JCM 800 SC20 and stick around, we'll just chat about it. This whole album and the guitar riffs are just so much fun to play and just listen to. It's just that classic sort of thrash tone. There's a lot of little subtleties in there and it's just not so straightforward and sort of caveman style playing. You've got to have... It's just a great guitar lesson, this whole album, and I've just been loving it for years. But a basic overview of the gear that I'm using today, I've got my Dave Mustaine Dean VMNT signature guitar, the Angel of Death. It's equipped with the Seymour Duncan Thrash Factor pickups. For years I used the active livewires that were installed in it, but I found since I had the JCM 800, those livewires just sort of push the front end a little bit too much and it just starts to sound a little bit muddy. So I went back to just trying the passives and went to the Thrash Factors, which is modelled off that classic JB that Dave had. And I just think it sounds so cool. They're a really good match with this guitar. But then it goes into the front end of the SC20 via the Ibanez tube screamer. Hopefully you can see the settings there. Into the MXR 6 band, which is also in the front, and then the Fortin Plus, which is just running through the effects loop today. I usually use the key in key through feature in a 4-cable method, but I've just tried it with this more of a subtle sort of tone, going just through the effects loop, and I think it's really cool and it's got a really smooth decay on it as well. The Boss Super Overdrive SD1 we're not using today, but I just find with this mixture of pedals in front of the JCM 800, I can get just about every classic thrash rhythm tone that I grew up with, so it's really cool. From there we're outputting through the 2 notes Torpedo Captor X, hopefully you can see it there, and that's simulating the Dave Mustaine 412 cabinet that he has with the vintage 30s inside, and I've got a single SM57 pushed up to it. You can see the settings there on the app. It's actually a really cool tone. I love this so much. But anyway, the secret sauce I found to getting this tone, and you can do it with just about any guitar out there with the humbucker. You change the aggression of the humbucker using the MXR 6 band that's downstream of the Ibanez tube screamer. The more mids that you actually push into this, the more that you get that sort of really percussive attack that Dave has on the album. It's not a super aggressive tone, that one. You can hear all the notes, it's really clean and clear, but it's an absolute classic sort of Dave Mustaine dialed in tone. As for the album, I really don't know what pedals and gear Dave exactly used on it. I'm pretty certain he used the JCM 800, but as far as going the Ibanez tube screamer or the Boss SD1, I'm going with the tube screamer, and as soon as I plugged in the MXR 6 band and just pushed those mids just slightly, things didn't really get too distorted, but you just definitely got that sort of percussive chop on the top that you really notice. I'll just play through that riff now and just turn the MXR6 on and off, and you'll just hear that slight little difference just with that attack. It doesn't seem to push too much of that treble too much. It's just that mids just giving you that more of that sort of articulate chop. You can hear it there, it's pretty subtle, but when you turn it on, it just adds that little bit more mids to the signal. Things just thicken up slightly, but you really just, it adds to that sort of percussive thing. But another thing that's really cool is that whole intro to Set the World Afire. I just think the whole song is just so cool. It's an absolute thrash masterpiece, but parts of the song are just really hard to hear and it's really difficult to learn. The tabs out there are terrible. But I've found with that part, I studied the crap out of Dave Mustaine, what he was doing live. I did it years ago and just never forgot. But the trick to that whole riff, you got to use that whole spider chord sort of thing, like the... But he goes on the starting on the 7th fret on the E on the A string, and it's like a series of... And it just sort of goes like that. It's one of those riffs, it's really hard to play slow and explain it, but it's... But anyway, back to the MXR6 band. I really think this is the secret sauce to this whole tone, and I think it just works with so many different guitars. I find the thrash factors, they're really aggressive and really edgy. They're almost like a ceramic style, even though they're an Alnico magnet. They just sort of really push like a ceramic and you get that edge. But if I was using a guitar like the RR5, that's got the TB4 and they're a lot less sort of aggressive than these thrash factors. All I'd be doing to compensate, just to make that aggressive attack really stand out, is I'll just be boosting some of the mids on the 6 band. It's the actual signal going into the front of the amp and you make it suit your guitar. So if you've got a guitar where the output of the pickups just aren't as strong as something like these, just add a little bit more mids to that tone. For some reason, when I go through the front of amps, I just never make negative values on any of the EQs going into the front. You seem to just want to like boost signals and just make things sort of keep pushing and getting more out of the front end. But I've just found with this tone, if you just take away just slightly on the bass and the treble, just on the outside, things just don't sound so sort of scratchy or full. You just get that really mid attack that Dave was known for. But really for years I've been playing this album and just dialing it any which way I can, whether I'm using Amplitube and virtual software or real amps. This is by far the closest I've ever managed to get this tone. It's just such a cool tone to get. It's really honest and true. Shows up all your picking in your attack, and it's just such a super cool thrash sort of tone. But I'll just keep playing some riffs here and hopefully you don't get bored. That's another killer riff that's really fun to play, but it's just got that really sort of difficult to hear bridge in it. It's not hard to play, it's just hard to hear. All you're doing actually there after the shuffle there from the F to the G, you're actually just hitting the D string on the 2nd fret, but then just hammering on to the A string on the 4th and pulling off consecutive after that. It's a really cool riff that's sort of hard to hear and unassuming and almost reminds me of something Adrian Smith used to come up with. And then it just goes on to the second part of the bridge, which again is just a whole lot of sort of hammer on pull offs, but and it really comes alive when you just sort of crank things up and you've got a cool martial tone. And it's more about the intensity of your playing and just how focused you are on just playing the riffs and just trying to be as fast as you can. And that really just shows with the whole Megadeth aura. It's not super clinical back then. There were mistakes. it wasn't messy, but it wasn't really clinically tight either. Sort of, Dave wasn't really aggressive with his palm muting. He let the notes sort of ring out. He did a lot of upstrokes, but when it all comes together and you play those riffs right, I think to me, it's the best time on a guitar you can have. It's just sitting there and just sort of thrashing out to those classics. But what I thought I'd do now, because the SD1 and the Ibanez Tube Screamer are really different, the SD1 tends to drop a lot of the bass and really push some of those mids into the mix. If I turn off the MXR6 and the Ibanez, we'll try and emulate that same tone just using the SD1. I don't know which one was actually used. I'm guessing it was either, but to me, just the Ibanez Tube Screamer working with that MXR6. I know Dave did have an EQ in his signal somewhere back in the day, but it really makes sense to me that you can get that percussive sort of chunk on top of the tone without distorting things too far and pushing that front end too much. But again, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video today. I just hope that I could show you something different, or just think of a different way to use the pedals that you've already got and that have been around for years. But all that being said, guys, it really is one of my favorite thrash tones of all time. I just absolutely love Megadeth and everything to do with it. But until next time, take care. I'll see you.